Chicago, 2011. A cop is murdered. Police and prosecutors swear they have the trigger man. He swears he didn't do it. How far will each side go to prove they're right?
Like it's just one bombshell after another, where you're like, what?
The story of a PlayStation, a brain-eating amoeba, and the relentless pursuit of justice. Off Duty, out now. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
This message comes from Jackson. Taxes aren't something you can only think about once a year. With investments, planning for tax day is year-round. Fortunately, Jackson offers tax-efficient products. Visit jackson.com for more information on how our products can make your tax bill a little bit less painful. Jackson is short for Jackson Financial Incorporated, Jackson National Life Insurance Company, Lansing, Michigan, and Jackson National Life Insurance Company of New York, Purchase, New York.
Howdy, howdy, ho, and welcome to Fantasy Fan Fellas. I'm Hayden, producer of the Fantasy Fangirls podcast and your resident lover of all things Sanderson.
And I'm Steven, your bookish internet goofball, but you can call me the Smash Daddy.
And we are currently deep diving Brandon Sanderson's fantasy epic, Mistborn. But here's the catch. Steven here has not read Mistborn before.
That's right, hey. So each week, you'll get my unfiltered, raw reactions to every single chapter.
And along the way, we'll do character deep dives, magic explainers, and Steven will even try to guess what's next. Spoiler alert, he'll be wrong.
Newsflash, I'm never wrong. Episodes come out every Wednesday, and you can find Fantasy Fan Fellas wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Psych Legal Pop Podcast. This is a podcast where we talk about popular culture through the lens of an attorney and a therapist. My name is Brooke Brigham. I'm the attorney.
And I'm Tess Brigham. I'm the therapist.
And today we are going to talk about a documentary that is really quite groundbreaking. It was made in 1998, and it's called The Brandon Teena Story.
Mm-hmm.
And
this documentary looks like it was made in 1952.
Yeah.
I don't know what year.
Say that.
Yeah.
This is the 90s.
Yes.
But look like the 70s.
Yes.
We'll get into that more. But this was the first. And then the next year in 1999, a film came out about the Brandon Teena story. And it starred Hilary Swank and Chloe Sevigny. Both were nominated for Oscars. Hilary Swank won the Oscar for Best Actress. And so this was really the first that I can remember mainstream portrayal of a story of a transgender person. And it's a tragic story because Brandon Teena was murdered. But it, like I said, it really brought to the forefront of culture, this is happening. And, I'm sure a lot of people had no idea that people were going through this, lived like this. This is the beginning of transgender visibility and rights and advocacy and all of that.
Yeah. So it was a combination of Brandon's story and then Matthew Shepard that was 1998, 97 that really got people to start to, lobby for hate. We need stronger hate crime laws. Like, this is not okay.
Well, and also I think it was just the first time people across the country learned that that this was an issue, that this was happening. And because it was not safe to be out as a transgender person. And because of instances like these. So anyway, we're going to start with just a synopsis of the story, and then we can get into some of the details of the documentary. So Brandon Teena was born on December 12th, 1972 as Teena Ray Brandon in Lincoln, Nebraska. He was assigned female at birth, but identified as male from a young age. Throughout his life, he struggled with the discomfort of being assigned female and sought to live as the man he knew himself to be. As more people in his hometown began to learn that he was identifying and living as a man, Brandon and his mother were concerned for his safety. So in the early 90s, Brandon moved to Falls City, Nebraska, a small rural town where he became friends with two men, John Lauder and Tom Neeson, who were unaware that he was transgender. As Brandon became closer to them, he began dating a woman named Lana Tisdale, further complicating his interactions with the two men. Over time, Lauder and Neeson discovered Brandon's transgender status and were deeply disturbed by it. Their discomfort with his gender identity eventually turned violent. Lauder and Neeson beat and raped Brandon, and despite Brandon reporting it to the police, Lauder and Neeson were questioned but not arrested or charged. In order to silence Brandon, on December 31st, 1993, Lauder and Neeson tracked Brandon down at a home 30 minutes away in Humboldt, Nebraska, where he was staying with his friend Lisa Lambert. Lisa's friend Philip Devine was also staying there that night. Lauder and Neeson brutally murdered all three, sparing Lisa's infant son, who was sleeping next to her. Lauder and Neeson were arrested and charged with multiple counts of rape and murder. They were both convicted on all counts in separate trials in 1995. Both men faced the death penalty, but Neeson cooperated and testified against Lauder in exchange for a life sentence. Brandon Teena's story was adapted into the 1999 film Boys Don't Cry, directed by Kimberly Peirce and starring Hilary Swank as Brandon and Chloe Sevigny as Lana. Both actresses were nominated for an Oscar, and Swank won for Best Actress. The film was widely praised for its portrayal of Brandon's life, struggles, and tragic death. It also brought attention to the issues of transgender rights, the violence that transgender individuals face, and the emotional toll of living as a transgender person in a hostile society.
Mm-hmm. Oof.
Heavy.
So, as we were talking about before we started recording, what always surprised me watching this documentary was how quickly this all happened. Because I think in my mind, I thought that Brandon lived in this town. I knew that Brandon was an outsider. I remember that from the movie, right? Kind of coming in and meeting this group of people. But you got the sense that, oh, these people hung out. This was like a year or something like that, you know, and then all of these things happened. I think Brandon moved to Falls River. I want to say like late around Thanksgiving, around this time, right? You know, late Thanksgiving, right. And then December
31st.
And then December 31st, he's brutally murdered.
Yeah.
So it was like boom, boom, like one thing after another. This all happened really quickly. And so where should we begin? Because there's a lot to talk about. One thing I will say is, of all the documentaries that we've watched, like I would not recommend watching this. Sorry, Amazon. But like, I just wouldn't recommend watching it because it's not organized very well. It's very confusing. They don't do a very good job of sort of orienting you to what's happening and what's going on. But
I feel that way.
Okay. Well, I felt that way, but I think the other level of it is that I think what the other part about this documentary is that how brutal and frank and how
the language
is
shocking. The way the prejudice, the discrimination, the hatred that these individuals had include the law enforcement,
yes,
the murderers. The vitriol with which they treated Brandon was shocking to me. It was shocking. It was as if this person was just not a human being.
Yeah.
And they were so their main concern was what kind of sex this person was having. They were obsessed with and even the law enforcement who's questioning Brandon is obsessed with all these prurient details about the rape.
Yeah, things that I'm like, is this important? Do you need to know this right now? And the fact that I know the sheriff, that whole thing is shocking. The other part that's very shocking are the people that are part of this story. The two men, Tom, also known as Marvin, and John. They talk about what they did as if they were like, well, I went to the store and then I brought carrots and then eggs and then I went over to John's house and then I did, right? Like it's the most casual thing.
Yeah.
Like do. And those men and the sheriff included, I am going to say, this is my point of view. It's almost as if the rape was okay. Like, it was almost kind of like, because the big thing that they kept coming back to was lying. You lied to people. You're lying to people about your gender, as if Brandon got some kind of pleasure out of, quote unquote, fooling people. Well, and therefore, do you know what I mean? And that's how they were seeing it, as if this is a game.
It affected, and also as if it affected them at all.
Yeah.
The only person who truly should have had or could have had any feelings about it one way or the other was Lana.
Yeah, exactly.
And Lana didn't care.
Yeah.
Lana,
you know why? Because Brandon was paying attention to her needs, and she liked it.
The beginning of the documentary starts out with all of Brandon's ex-girlfriends.
And God damn it, Brandon knew how to please a woman.
Yes, they all said they loved him. He was so attentive. He knew how to treat a woman. He knew how to please everything. They loved him. And even after they found out that he was transgender, they didn't really seem to care that much.
No, they were like, God damn, this is good. I don't care how all of this is happening.
Well,
it's happening.
And so Lana, it was the same kind of thing. Like, Lana meets him, he's new in town. She meets him. These guys, Lauder and Neeson, they're friends of hers, right?
Yeah.
So and then Lauder's sister is her best friend. And Michelle, she was an asshole too. She was kind of a piece of work. And anyway, Lana meets Brandon. They kind of fall in love, and she eventually finds out, and she didn't care.
No.
She didn't break up with him.
No.
Nothing.
No.
And so why do other people care what these two people, why these two men who are so evil, just evil personified, are so upset by this that they feel entitled to go and commit a rape on this person to punish them?
Yeah, to like rip down his pants, to prove something, as if you have the right to do that.
Yeah. He deserved it because he lied. Well, he didn't lie to you. And, that's between him and
Lana
partners. Yeah. It was so deep. Like, where does an individual get that mindset, or because they both had it. It was almost like a Pavlovian response that they had.
Yeah.
Oh, we find out that this is a transgender man. Oh, well, we must rape him.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And prove how manly we are. And
it's sick.
And the sheriff, I'm sorry, was co-signing it.
Yeah.
Absolutely co-signing the behavior. And we learn that the sheriff had brought in Tom and John for questioning on December 28th and then let them go.
Mm-hmm.
So 3 people died because the sheriff could not, just didn't feel like he should hold them. He questioned them for a little bit and then let them go. And they figured out, it sounds like they figured out like, oh no, Brandon told. So of course, what are we going to do? Oh, we have to. We have to go kill him now. It's ridiculous. Ridiculous is not even the word. It's just, it's hard to wrap your brain around.
Yeah.
It's just, all of it is so hard to wrap your brain around. And just watching it, you're like, what? This is 1993?
Well, this rural Nebraska, and that's another thing. Like, when you look at the footage, and I'm not saying anything bad about Nebraska or rural communities or whatever, but this looked like a place. Seriously did not look like we were in 1995.
Mm-mm.
I mean, I thought we were in the late 60s, early 70s. The people, these two, Neeson and Lauder, they were already criminals. You know what I mean? They're not that old. They're probably like early 20s or something.
Yeah.
They're already, in and out of jail, criminals, sociopaths, basically. And I don't know, the whole vibe of they kept interviewing all these different random people. And it's like, who are these people?
Yeah. Well, that was my problem with the documentary, because at one point early on, we meet Sean and Joanne.
Yeah. Now, I never understood, who are they?
And Joanne is actually the name of Brandon's mother, but we meet that Joanne later on. I'm like, oh, wait, so you're Joanne too, but you're not that Joanne. Okay. They never explain who, and Sean never says a thing. Do you know what I mean?
he looks disturbed. He like he does not want to be there talking about this.
Yeah. And so that's my complaint about the documentary, because it was like establishing like, who is this person and what's the relationship to everything that's going on. But it was, these guys were, the way in which they talked about everything in this documentary, both of these men, it was like, it was nothing. And John did say that about, is it Fall River?
Mm-hmm.
Falls River. He said that it sounds like it's kind of there's not a lot of opportunity in Falls River. And so that also makes you wonder, like, why would Brandon go there of all the places? Like, wouldn't you go to a more metropolitan city? I understand you grew up in Nebraska and you don't want to leave and go too far, but you would think you would. Why would you go to a very rural, small town? Is it because he knew that girl, Lisa?
I think he had to have been, because he didn't have any money. And so he had to have gone there because he could stay with his friend Lisa, perhaps. Yeah, they didn't explain that. So there were a lot of gaps like that, but you can kind of put two and two together. But yeah, I mean, I realized, because his mother was also afraid for him. You know, she even said, I'm afraid if people find out here in Lincoln that he will be raped. That was the through line throughout this whole thing.
Yep.
That eventually he is going to be sexually assaulted or raped or something. And so that's why he left. But why go to a place that's even more bigoted?
Well, with no opportunities. I mean, John was saying that women are lucky if they don't get pregnant and actually keep a job. And because it sounds like everyone women just get pregnant right away, start having babies and get on welfare.
That's what he said. He said, you're lucky if you can find a woman who can get a job and keep a job. Well,
John,
what woman who with a job would want you, John?
I was just like, God, this is a sad, sad town. If John is a pick of the litter, and I kind of feel like he might have been. I think he might have been kind of a stud in that town. I don't know. He had a fiance.
Oh, and then the other guy, Tom Neeson, he had, again, in the 90s, a huge mullet.
Oh, yeah. He was rocking that thing.
Go out in the 80s,
not
70s?
in Falls River.
I don't know.
They're holding on to the early 80s like it's nobody's business. Oh, the fashions, all of it. I'm like, this is the 90s? Like,
it
was
behind
in the times.
It was like going way back in time. Yeah, and like Tom said, and this is probably one of the other things that bothered them, was that so Brandon starts hanging out with Tom and John because they are friends with Lana. Because Lana's best friend, like I said, I believe is John's sister.
Michelle.
Yes. So they're hanging out and Tom's like, we would talk about women, like, look at that girl and look at that girl. And so they're kind of broing out with, with Brandon talking about women. And I guess they felt betrayed by that because, like.
What a betrayal. What a betrayal. Yeah.
Oh, these people are psycho.
Yeah. Well, and that was a big thing. Like, no one could wrap their brain around any of this because they're like, wait, so are you a lesbian? Like, and, just this great need to define this. And I think that what I noticed when I was watching this documentary was two things that have really changed in our culture is the first one being, we've talked about this, like gender being fluid, sexuality being fluid, that, people are less inclined to need to define, who you are and who you're attracted to and all of that kind of stuff. But yes, there was a time where it was so that label of
it was
who
so
I am,
binary.
it was so you needed that label. The second thing too is that, again, we saw this a lot. If you watch any old true crime documentaries, you see this, which is there's so much victim blaming in this. It's like this Brandon was, because Brandon wanted to live his truth. He therefore was doing this thing that was terrible and deceptive. And therefore he put himself in these awful situations. And so therefore he should blank, like something bad should, it's definitely that blaming the victim, blaming and assuming that they are right. Like, you know, she shouldn't have been wearing that short skirt. All the stuff they've been saying since the beginning of time.
Right. And, you know, the only way that they found out was that Brandon got arrested because he had forged some checks, and Lana bailed him out of jail. And when she went to the jail, they had put him in the women's section. And then that's when she discovered this. But again, she didn't break it off with him. You know, she had to
she bailed him out.
That, but yeah, she bailed him out. She, you know, again, and this shows you just the ignorance. Like, her mother was totally against this whole thing, so that she should get away from him, because those kind of people have AIDS.
Ugh.
I mean, this is, you know.
And I'm sorry, was that woman wearing a nursing outfit?
Yes, she's a medical.
She's in the healthcare field. I was like, at first I was like, are you in jail too? Because this looks very similar to what John and Tom are wearing. But no, you're at your home. And I was like, oh, you're wearing scrubs. Like, you must be in the healthcare field.
Yeah. And then she actually went to confront Brandon and demanded to know his gender. And she admitted to shoving him. So she went and confronted him, got physical with him. What is wrong with these people?
Oh yeah, they have zero respect for anything or anyone who is doesn't look like you, doesn't act, you know what I mean? Zero respect at all. Like, and that was another piece of this too is, and this was depicted in the story, was the fact that Brandon was very lost in many ways, and really didn't have a way of earning money. And so would forge checks and steal money from people. And, you know, one of his early girlfriends talks about the fact that he took her credit card to buy an engagement ring and, you know, all of that kind of stuff. And so that just fueled the fact that she had these, that he was also committing these crimes was, lying. He's a liar. He's a liar. He's a liar. You know, he lies here and he lies here. And that's this thing that we can't get the nuances of, yes, the forgery's illegal, but the other one is a lie. It's not a lie. It's not a lie to Brandon.
No, he's just trying to live his life, live his truth, and it's nobody else's business. So then Tom and John got wind of this from Lana, I assume. And so this is Christmas Eve, you know, just again, he hasn't been living there that long. Tom has a party at his house, and they confront Brandon. Tom held his arms, and John pulled down his pants and, you know, checked to see what was there. I mean, it's just gross. And they did some other things. I'm not even going to get into it.
Yeah.
And that is the night that they both raped him. After they found out about this. And so, you know, I'm surprised that Brandon actually did go to the police.
Yes, I am too. I am very surprised. And I think it was Lana's mother who now is on her high horse about things and saying, well, this is terrible. No one should be raped. You need to go report this. But I too am surprised. And that's what was interesting about, I guess I had forgotten a lot of the movie. It's been a while. But I was surprised by this, by the fact that Brandon did go to the police. I always thought that he never went to the police, but was killed anyway.
Yeah, the movie was, you know, obviously based on this, but it could have been in the movie that he didn't go to the police, but he did, and they recorded. There's an audio recording of the sheriff interviewing him. And of course, this
sheriff recording is the worst thing you will ever hear in your entire life.
So mad.
You just want to leap out of your skin through the TV and just strangle this guy. I mean, awful. And here's the other thing too. You have a rape victim, someone who's coming in and saying, I was horribly violated. And the way in which he is being treated, it's like there's no care, no consideration, no thought, nothing, not one. And I feel like by this point in our culture, we did know, I don't think this was a typical rape interview case. You know what I mean? Like the standards at which they were just fine interviewing Brandon.
Well, yeah, this guy is basically just the local sheriff. He's the sheriff. It's not even like, I mean, okay, you don't have anyone in your department who handles sexual assault cases.
Yeah, a female
trained.
Maybe?
Yeah, a female officer. Or
someone a little bit gentler.
Trained in questioning victims. No, this sick fuck, this sheriff, he was asking questions like
Sheriff Lau, Laux. And I hope he is rotting somewhere.
Yeah, he was asking these gross questions. And Brandon, at a certain point, just, kind of stopped answering a lot of his inane questions and said, what does this have to do with anything?
But the questions, they almost felt like this Sheriff Lau was getting off on this.
Yes.
The questions that he was asking had nothing to do with, we need to corroborate this or evidence or this or that. And none of it. It was these, and I don't even want to say them. They're so awful. No. I don't want to repeat it, but I will just say the things that he's saying are, well, I'm surprised they wouldn't do that. Well, did they do this? Why wouldn't they do that? I mean, just these crazy questions.
Yeah.
Psych Legal Pop will be back after these messages.
This message comes from Jackson. Taxes aren't something you can only think about once a year. With investments, planning for tax day is year-round. Fortunately, Jackson offers tax-efficient products. Visit Jackson.com for more information on how our products can make your tax bill a little bit less painful. Jackson is short for Jackson Financial Incorporated, Jackson National Life Insurance Company, Lansing, Michigan, and Jackson National Life Insurance Company of New York, Purchase, New York.
Howdy, howdy, ho, and welcome to Fantasy Fan Fellas. I'm Hayden, producer of the Fantasy Fangirls podcast and your resident lover of all things Sanderson.
And I'm Steven, your bookish internet goofball, but you can call me the Smash Daddy.
And we are currently deep diving Brandon Sanderson's fantasy epic, Mistborn. But here's the catch. Steven here has not read Mistborn before.
That's right, hey. So each week, you'll get my unfiltered, raw reactions to every single chapter.
And along the way, we'll do character deep dives, magic explainers, and Steven will even try to guess what's next. Spoiler alert, he'll be wrong.
Newsflash, I'm never wrong. Episodes come out every Wednesday, and you can find Fantasy Fan Fellas wherever you get your podcasts.
And then they're cutting back and forth between them and John and Tom, and they're talking as casually as casual can be. Well, Tom won't talk about it because he's in the midst of his appeal.
Yeah, good luck with that. I have some updates on these guys.
Okay, and Tom really showed his himself here. He was like, Susan, we talked about this. Susan's the documentary filmmaker. Susan, I have my appeal.
Yeah, there's only so much I can say because of my appeal.
Yes.
But dude, you're never getting out of jail. Give it up.
And then they go over to John and John's spilling everything.
Yeah, he tells the whole casually. Well, he's sentenced to death, but he doesn't seem to care. He's just telling the whole story, his version of the story, of course, which is, crazy. But then, going back to Lana's mom, who is one of the most problematic people in this movie, because even though Lana's mom said, nobody deserves to be raped and you need to report it and this and that, then she immediately goes to Tom and John and tells them, Brandon made a report. He went to the police and made a report. And so you better get rid of your evidence, is what he told them. And then I guess Tom started cleaning up the walls in the house, where they assaulted him inside the house. And it's just like, oh my God, woman, what are
you playing at here, Lana's mom?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, you're awful. Like, did you just set Brandon up? Like, I'm sorry. I hope you feel guilty about Brandon and these three innocent people, but two other people that weren't involved in this at all. being murdered, a mother being taken from her child. I blame you. Lana's mom, what's your name again? Forgot.
Linda.
Linda.
Thank you, Linda.
Yeah, fuck you, Linda, and fuck you, Sheriff Lau.
So basically, when they go to court, this was a little hard to understand, but I feel like they admitted. Okay, so Tom was the one who's so worried about his appeal.
Mm-hmm.
He admitted everything in court.
Yes.
What on what grounds are you appealing? You admitted everything because they had this audio recording of the DA questioning him, I think on the stand. It wasn't clear, but he's just going through and just admitting everything.
Yeah, I was kind of confused because Tom did get a plea deal. And that was the thing that was so strange about the story. Because if you look at the story, it really felt like Tom was the leader of the pack and John was going along. Mm-hmm. But it sounds like the way in which, and I think the movie depicted this too, where it was much more John and Tom was going along. I think they're both horrible, but
yeah.
I'm just saying that why did they need to get Tom to make a deal to make sure that they nab John?
Well, because they said that, okay, so Tom confessed everything.
Mm-hmm.
John did not. Their evidence against John was weaker because they didn't have any forensic evidence because they did a rape kit, but it got lost.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's really interesting in this small town.
Yeah.
It gets lost.
Yeah.
I'm amazed they even did a rape kit.
I am too. Yeah. So they needed Tom to testify against John to shore up his conviction. So what they did was they said, okay, we'll take the death penalty off the table for you, Tom. Mm-hmm. So Tom just got, life sentences for everything, probably, multiple life sentences, but he's, not going to be on death row. But John, they were able to convict him and he did get the death penalty.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so when all this was happening,
because I'm just looking at my notes because John really he said that he kept saying that he saw the rape as consensual. Yeah. And I think this is the crux of this is Tom, John, the sheriff, Lana, Lana's mother, like all of these people did not see what they did to Brandon as a crime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, unbelievably so. I can't even comment on that.
Consensual. Consensual. At what point was that consensual? Ugh. Sorry.
Anyway,
I'm just going off. These people piss me off.
So Brandon went to go stay. I think he was staying with her all along, but went to go stay with his friend Lisa Lambert, who lived in Humboldt, Nebraska, which was 30 miles away. So on December 31st, this is actually 1993. I think we'd said 1990.
Yeah, all of this happened in like a month.
Yeah. So Lisa's mom comes to her house and she's the one who found the bodies. So Lisa was there. She had an infant son and Brandon was staying there. And then a friend of hers, Philip Devine, he lived in Iowa, but he was in town visiting. He had family there. And he was over there. I'm not sure why. And Tom and John basically stormed in the house with guns and knives and killed everybody except the baby.
Mm-hmm.
Just murdered them, executed them, like shot them at point blank range, just to silence Brandon. Mm-hmm. And to silence these other people so that they couldn't tell on them. Mm-hmm. Did they really think they were going to get away with this?
Yeah, these are the worst criminals known to man. They are terrible, terrible criminals. And again, I think that they really thought, I feel like they thought they were going to get away with this. Yeah. I really think they thought they were going to get away with this. And it's awful to say, but I bet you anything if they did not murder him and the two other people, I think that most likely Brandon something would have happened. Brandon would have dropped the charges. Brandon would have left town. They weren't going to get in trouble. because of the system. The sheriff wasn't at all, he
wasn't. He didn't care. He wasn't going to press charges.
Like no one cared. No one really cared. So no one was going to. You were going to be fine. You really would. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. They're now sort of like both sitting in prison for the rest of their lives with this attitude of like, how did I end up here?
Yeah.
That's the part I don't get. I just don't. Yeah. And then
you're right.
Tom said at one point, he said he felt shame. I'm like, oh, good. Oh, Tom's having a moment here. He felt shame that someone would think that it's true that he would rape someone. That was his big feeling shame.
But then he admitted to it in court.
And again, I really truly think these two think that they were justified in what they did. I really do believe.
Okay, so he's saying, yeah, I had sex with him, but it wasn't rape.
Yes.
Okay.
Because, this person lied to me and I had the right to, or because he wasn't pushing you off or saying no. I mean, I'm sure he made his feelings clear. Like, absolutely. He didn't ask for this. So,
well, yeah, in no way, shape, or form. They actually removed him from the house and put him in a car and
yes, because they knew what they were, right?
Which is kidnapping.
Yes, exactly.
So anyway, so the trials happened in 1995. Like I said, both found guilty. Death sentence for John, life sentences for Tom. So Tom is serving terms for 2 second-degree murders and 1 first-degree murder. John, I don't know what his exact charges are. It just says death row awaiting appeals. This was like on the screen at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So when this was made, this was back in 1998. So they were still filing their appeals. And then the sheriff, the pervert, Sheriff Lau, he lost re-election for Richardson County Sheriff, but he got elected as a county commissioner, but then lost that job and ended his career as a school bus driver.
Good. Good. I hope those kids treat you like crap. I really do. I really do.
I went and I hope he's dead.
Yeah.
I went and looked up, the current legal status. John has appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court 3 times now.
Oh, God.
And been denied, they won't even hear it. It's called a writ of certiorari. And it's basically saying, will you hear my case? Because it's not a direct appeal. It's just asking them to hear it for some other, constitutional reason. Rejected. He's out of appeals. They're both out of appeals. It's gone up to the Nebraska Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court. They are going to rot in jail. And then this was interesting. Brandon's mom, Joanne, she filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Sheriff Lau and the county because if they had arrested them for the rape, then perhaps they would be in jail and not ever have the chance to kill Brandon.
Yes.
So,
and I think they have a good case.
Yeah. And that case kind of went through a bunch of legal, back and forth and appeals and stuff. But in the end, she ended up with a little over $100,000, which not enough, but, unfortunately, when a child dies, the damages are not very high because it's not like you depend on them to support you and all that kind of stuff. But I think she did get some punitive damages and other stuff.
Yeah. Well, Joanne really struggled with Brandon's identity. If you see his headstone at his grave, it's not the name he wanted to go by. It's not Brandon. And I was reading through, I guess the mom, it's been many years now. I think the mom is at a different place now. And I think she admits that, like, I'm at a different place. I'm at a different way of thinking about all of this. But she does say, I remember reading something where she just talks about how she kind of just didn't understand it. Didn't understand why couldn't Brandon just, dress like a girl and like boys? Like why couldn't he just get along with the program? And I do. And I think a lot of times there's been this idea, and even now it's people still throw this out of like, Brandon's just being difficult, or Brandon's just, being edgy.
Yeah, why are you doing this? Why are you so hard on yourself?
So because this is one of the questions the sheriff asks in this god-awful interview, which is, why do you go around lying and kissing girls? And that's when Brandon's like, why do I have to answer that?
Yeah.
That's got nothing to do with any of this. And he says, well, I have a sexual identity crisis. Because it sounds like I saw this on Wikipedia that he and his sister Tammy had been,
that's right.
Had been molested as children, and that he did seek help and counseling. And that I think in the counseling, he talked a lot about his sexuality, but would not talk about the molestation.
But I think someone did diagnose him
with sexual identity crisis, which I believe is probably the really? DSM. Let me look in the DSM.
Okay. I didn't know if that was a modern day acceptable diagnosis.
No. Now, well, I think I have to look and see, because this is not an area that I work in a lot, so I don't diagnose people. But I think that's the big thing is they're trying, it shouldn't be a diagnosis.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So I think they're I feel like we've moved away from that. But, the being homosexual was considered a diagnosis up until I want to say the late 80s. Like really, really not at all as far back as you think it is. I'm always shocked when I read these things of just how so much of this has just changed in the last 10, 20 years.
I mean, I think it's taken, it's not just the people in the 90s in this movie. It's taken our society a long time to understand this, because it hasn't been, we haven't been educating people. It's just something where, I don't know. I mean, I don't, God, certainly when we were growing up, nobody talked about these things. And honestly, nobody talked about these things with any real intelligence or authority until I want to say like the last 10 years. I mean, just before that, it was just not, I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm just showing my age. Maybe it's talked about more, and by younger people, but just as a society as a whole, it just has taken a very, very, very long time.
Yeah. Well, I remember, as I've mentioned, I'm a big fan of Survivor, and Max used to watch it with me at one point. And there was a season where it was a big deal. It was very controversial where, it was like a final tribal council, and one of the other participants, survivors, called out one of the other survivors and said, well, why haven't you told people that you're trans? And it was a very shocking moment. And it was very much, things, it was interesting to see that everybody that was there and all the other contestants were horrified. They were like, you have no right to say that. That is not for you to say. I mean, they all were very much like, how could you have done that? That's awful. You should not have done that.
Why did they even air it?
Well, I think that it had, I have to say, I know this was talked about a lot, and the person where this was revealed has written articles and he's been very vocal about it. But I think that he said that he was called by Survivor. they did have a long talk with him about like, what do we do? But I remember in that moment, Max turning to me going, what's trans? And I realized at that time, I mean, this was 10 years ago. So I remember at that time thinking I knew, but I had never even thought to educate my child about this, and it actually in that moment, I think Survivor did do a good thing because it opened up conversations. Like Max was asking me questions and I was able to talk to him about this. And I was just like, I'll be perfectly blunt with you. I had no idea until this person revealed it. I'd been this contestant had been on another season, watched an entire season. I didn't know. I don't think anyone would have ever really known unless this was revealed.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, I'm assuming that. I mean, my daughter went to a very, very, very liberal, progressive school where they learned about everything. So I have to assume that they learned about that because I don't remember ever having to really explain it to her. Like she was explaining it to me,
Yeah, Max.
Yeah.
Because I'm always asking Max, I'm like, so what's the difference between pan and this? And, like I'm asking him, he really gets it now. But I just remember, that you're going to have to talk to your kids about sex and, try to talk to them as early as it felt appropriate and in a way in which it was like, honest and real. You don't want to not have these conversations with your kids. You need to. And so I remember I've already had these conversations with Max about other things. And it was really like, wow, I just didn't like, yes, this is a conversation. This is part of our conversations now.
It's a new part of it. Yeah. I remember when Layla was in kindergarten, they were having, she'd only been in school a few months and they were having the Christmas pageant. And there was a boy in her class who wanted to wear a dress to the pageant. And so his mother emailed the whole class and, said that he was going to do this and kind of asked for our support and maybe talk to your kids about it. The kids already knew. They had, because I said something to Layla and she's like, oh yeah, we already know. We talked about that. And nobody cared.
Yeah. And the parents cared.
And the parents and all the parents were like, oh yeah, of course, we're supportive and, we'll make sure we don't do whatever. And it was like, wow, okay. But like I said, this is extremely progressive school. Like, this isn't the norm. I know.
But also it's interesting, right? Because the issue was it was the parents. Like the parents are worried because that's how they grew up, how we grew up, right? And even in our liberal bubble here, right, we still know that and fear like something could happen. And it's just interesting, as people bash Gen Zers, it's like, you know what? God damn it, they're accepting of each other. Hell of a lot more than we are. I mean, you got to give them some credit because for this generation for being incredibly, I'm just constantly amazed by how fluid and open and honest. And there's it's like just not even there. It's amazing to see. And so, when you're all bashing Gen Z, it's like they got a lot of great qualities.
Yeah, no,
they
trust
really,
me,
really do.
Our generation and generations before did not deal with this so well. No. But also, again, I think it was also a lack of education and understanding because we never talked about this. It wasn't taught in school. When I was in high school, nobody was openly gay. And you couldn't be.
No.
It was impossible. It just didn't happen.
And even I graduated Berkeley, California, Berkeley High in 1991. I don't think anyone was really out. No one was really out openly gay. And Berkeley.
I know.
So, you've got the best place to be. And even then it wasn't accepted at all.
Well, like I said, I mean, this is a tragic story, hard to watch. But again, this was the first movie. This was the first cultural piece of art, whatever that I can think of that ever addressed this. When this movie came out, it was a big deal.
Well, and then there was also the movie with Felicity Huffman, Trans America, which that
was much later.
Was that much later? Okay.
That's like the 2010s or...
Oh, really? That far? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like 20
I somehow
years
thought
later.
that was the early aughts, but yeah, I mean, it's, you know, if nothing else, it's so tragic because Brandon had just turned 21 years old, beginning of his life, and none of this needed to happen. But, you know, all you can do is just see this wasn't their choice, but these sacrifices Brandon, Teena, Matthew Shepard made for us to move forward, you know, for something to goddamn change and for people to get outraged because these were outrageous. Yeah. I mean, the Matthew Shepard thing. Oh God. I mean, that's horrific.
Well, and so many more, so many
It's not
more
just
that
the two of them.
We don't know, we don't hear about. And I don't want to get too political here, but now, you know, we just went through this election where they made one of Trump's biggest issues was that, you know, Kamala Harris was going to give anyone who wanted one, you know, a sex change operation. Yeah. And I mean, illegal aliens getting, you know, sex change operations in prison. I mean, so, I mean, I'm afraid for these young people.
Yes.
This is awful. Like, we're just going backwards, and it's dangerous and it's awful.
It is.
So that's all I'll say about that. But I mean, it's like, I can't believe, like, usually when we move forward with giving people grace and rights and understanding and all that kind of stuff, we don't just like take 10 steps back. It's awful.
Yeah.
So, anyway. Well, if you got to the end of this, thank you. I know this is not an easy topic.
No, it's not. It's not an easy topic, and that's the thing. I go back and forth because sometimes I'm watching these documentaries going, why are we doing this to ourselves? Like, we are volunteering. We are voluntarily, like, no one is telling us to do this. And at the same time, I'm incredibly appreciative for being exposed to these things and appreciative of, right, like, you know, it's hard. You're having to kind of look at yourself, look at the world, look at the people around you, look at your own behavior and your own beliefs and all of that. So yeah, some days I wonder why we do this, but other times I also think, you know, as much as I love talking about sister wives and all the other kind of crazy stuff that we talk about, but this is the important stuff. Like, this is the stuff that maybe will impact something somewhere in some small way. I don't know.
Yeah. And, you know, if we got anything wrong or said anything wrong or off, let us know, you know, because it's hard to talk about these things. Because I don't know sometimes if it's coming off, you know, if I'm saying this right or it's coming off wrong or whatever. So, you know, I'm open completely to, you know, constructive criticism.
Yes, just don't call us nitwits. Just don't call us nitwits, or you dummies.
Yeah, we're trying here. We are trying to do the right thing.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us. If you would like to support our podcast, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast. And if you feel so inclined, you can give us a 5-star rating and review, which helps other people find the podcast. And if you like to hear about these things and get more documentary, true crime type content, we have a Patreon where we do a weekly bonus episode. We do a monthly true crime episode just for our patrons. And we also do a monthly Ask Us Anything. And you can also get all of the regular shows ad-free on the Patreon. There's 2 different tiers. So go check that out at Patreon.com/PsychLegalPop podcast.
Yes.
And we're also on social media, Instagram, TikTok, PsychLegalPop.
Yep.
So until next time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Howdy, howdy, ho, and welcome to Fantasy Fan Fellas. I'm Hayden, producer of the Fantasy Fangirls podcast and your resident lover of all things Sanderson.
And I'm Steven, your bookish internet goofball, but you can call me the Smash Daddy.
And we are currently deep diving Brandon Sanderson's fantasy epic, Mistborn. But here's the catch. Steven here has not read Mistborn before.
That's right, hey. So each week, you'll get my unfiltered, raw reactions to every single chapter.
And along the way, we'll do character deep dives, magic explainers, and Steven will even try to guess what's next. Spoiler alert, he'll be wrong.
Newsflash, I'm never wrong. Episodes come out every Wednesday, and you can find Fantasy Fan Fellas wherever you get your podcasts.
Over 90 of the top 100 U.S. accounting firms trust Bill to handle bill pay processes. Why? Because our tools are built on over $1 trillion of secure payments. We're not just moving money. We're powering financial workflows for 500,000 customers. That's a level of expertise you just can't fake. Ready to talk with an expert? Visit Bill.com/proven to get started and grab a $250 gift card as a thank you. Terms and conditions apply. See offer page for details.
Pepsi Prebiotic Cola in original and cherry vanilla. That Pepsi taste you love with no artificial sweeteners, only 30 calories, just 5 grams of sugar, and 3 grams of prebiotic fiber. That great Pepsi taste with even more to love. Pepsi Prebiotic Cola. Unbelievably Pepsi.